Should be going live. All right. So if you're joining us, we're going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to join us. As you can tell, we are not in our normal location. It's Oklahoma, and just like I hear it said everywhere all over the country. I used to teach everywhere. And everywhere you would go, they would say, hey, if you don't like the weather, stick around, it'll change. That has never been truer in any place I've ever lived than Oklahoma. I remember my brother Wayne sitting here, he'll tell you, one day, it was like 80 degrees that afternoon. We were out in the front of his apartment complex playing football. Later that afternoon, it cooled down. A warm front hit a cold front. We had a tornado. Then we went to Fayetteville, about 45 minutes away from here, and on the way home, it snowed on us. So all within one day, 80-some degrees in the afternoon, a tornado, and not just a little bit of snow, but a lot of snow on the way home.
That's so crazy.
That's Oklahoma weather. So now tell me, stick around, it'll change somewhere else. I won't believe you. Anyways, so last week we talked about understanding biblical covenant. And we started out trying to understand biblical covenant by trying to understand the picture of a marriage being the example of the relationship the Father wants with men. When I teach biblical covenant, we're always going to be focused more on the men than the women. So men, this is the one teaching that you get your backsides whipped all the way through because we're not doing our job. But we're going to learn. We're going to learn how to do our job and start walking in covenant the way we're supposed to be. Our society, our parent, I always think of that scripture, Jeremiah 16:19, when it says, that in the last days that his people would come to him by his name and say, surely we've inherited lies and vanity and things wherein there is no profit. And that's one of the things that we've inherited. We've inherited advocating our roles to our wives. I mean, the whole women's lib movement that happened way back when, and probably even before then, it's been going on for generations. And we'll see, because the scripture we're going to read today actually says it was going on in that day and time. So we need to realize what the Father's calling us to and how to make our relationships look like that mirror picture of the relationship that He wants with us. So to begin, turning our desire to the desire of Youre. We're going to look at that scripture again, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15 and 16 here in a minute. But in that verse it says that her desire would be to her husband and that he would rule over her. But let's look at these scriptures right here in Psalms 145:19. It says, He will fulfill the desire of them that fear Him. He also will hear their cry and save them. So, He wants us to fear Him?
Yes.
Wives, should you fear your husband?
To some degree, I think.
Well, yeah. Scripture says, Ecclesiastes says, for the whole duty of man is to fear God and keep His commandments. That's our whole duty, is to fear God and keep His commandments. Because if we're truly in fear of Him, then we know how righteous and how just He is, and how righteous and just His rulings are. So when we begin to explore that, we have to explore the commandments. And then when we start realizing that He is just and holy and we don't keep His commandments, then He has no other choice but to bring judgment upon us. That same relationship that He's having between Himself and a man is the same relationship that He wants between a man and a woman. And I know last week I had a lot of comments come in, a lot of women mad because I made this statement, but I'm going to make it again today. Women were not made for God. They were made for man, out of man. Yahweh took something from man created something better from that and presented it back to man. Because if he would have kept it away from man, it wasn't Yahweh's possession anymore, was it? As soon as Adam was given free will, Adam, that thing that he took from Adam belonged to Adam, right? So he had to give that thing back to Adam or he would have been a thief. Who's a thief and a liar? Hasatan, right? Doesn't want to even be looking like Hasatan. So when we begin to realize how precious our wives are, we begin to realize how precious we are to the Father. But realizing that, we also have to understand that ketubah that he gave us, we call it the Torah, that ketubah he gave us has some prerequisites for us as men. Proverbs 10:24. The fear of the wicked, it shall come upon him, but the desire of the righteous shall be granted. So, if you're a wicked person and you're afraid of this or that happening to you, yeah, it's going to happen to you. The Father's going to allow it to happen to you. But if you're righteous, the Father's going to give you the desires of your heart. That's what Scripture tells us about His love for us. Proverbs 11:23. The desire of the righteous is only good, but the expectation of the wicked is wrath. So, I know I didn't tell everybody, but those people who showed up today because it's snowing outside and rain and pipes are freezing, all kinds of stuff, we're doing it at the house, not at the synagogue. But there's a bunch of people sitting around here, not just me out here talking to the wind today. So if you hear me talking to somebody, I'm not making them up. They're really existing out here. So when we look at that righteousness, if we're righteous and we do an unrighteous act, what do we expect?
Consequences, punishment.
Judgment, consequences. If you were living in your mom and dad's house and your mom and dad told you not to do something and you did it anyways, and then you got caught doing it, what would you expect?
Whipping, branding, or something.
You wouldn't expect them just to go, oh, that's all right, no matter what I said, you just do whatever you want to do. No, they told you not to do something because they wanted you to not do that thing. Same thing Yahweh tells us, to do things and to not do things. Chris, did you get something here? The woman's desire turned to her husband. Genesis 3:15 through 16. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. So let's stop right there for a minute. If you haven't seen it, go to Rumble, watch the teaching. We did a teaching on this scripture as well. But I want to stop and focus on that for just a second. And I will put enmity between the woman and between thy seed and her seed. Is there anywhere in Scripture that talks about a woman having seed? So right there we see a foretelling of the Mashiach. Because women don't have seed. Men have seed. So the only woman to ever have seed of her own was the Virgin Mary, who bore forth the Messiah. And when we begin to understand that, we'll start seeing the picture. That even in the curse, because the woman was created the weaker vessel, right? You're going to see a clear picture here today, okay? Because if Adam would have stopped, even if Eve would have partaken of the tree, if Adam would have stopped right there and said, no, absolutely not. I nullify this vow you've made with whatever this is today. It would have been as nothing had ever happened. Because Yahweh himself would not have interfered with Adam correcting his wife. Okay? So the Father, in Eve's judgment, is actually not only giving her a judgment, but He's actually giving her the blessing as well. many knows that the Father's judgment is a blessing? If He's truly judging you, if He's truly bringing judgment into your life, it don't feel like a blessing. It feels like a whooping. But the end result is a blessing. The same is true in this verse right here. And He's going to put enmity between the serpent's seed and the woman's seed. And it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. A whole other message in that. I just want to point out the part about that representing Yeshua. Unto the woman He said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow in conception. There's her curse. Now, women have been taught that the whole rest of this verse is their curse. That's the only curse that you got, was now that you were going to have sorrow in your conception. What happens when you birth a child, you raise a child for 18, 25 years, and then it goes off and does exactly the opposite of everything you've trained it to do?
It's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. It brings sorrow to your life, doesn't it? Because He's telling you, no matter how good you raise your kids, they're going to have their own mind. They're going to be living in a wicked world that's going to be drawing them away from everything that you taught them to do, because you brought sin into the world. Okay? Unto the woman He said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. Meaning, it's going to hurt when you're having birth, but your sorrow, that's not the end of it. The birth in itself is going to pair in comparison to the sorrow you have later in life that those children will cause you. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be unto thy husband, and he shall rule over you. Okay, we kind of talked about this a little bit last week. It was kind of our side note, but I want to make it a focal point this week. It's not a curse for your desire to be turned after your husband. What's the Father's will right now for every man? That our desire be turned after Him, right? So now, it's His job, it's Yahweh's job, to turn our desire as men to follow Him. That's why He's given us the ketubah. If we start doing everything in the ketubah, guess where our desire is going to be? It's going to be in prayer. It's going to be in reading the Word. It's going to be coming to know everything we can possibly know about Him and His kingdom. Because that's where we want to be. Our desire has totally changed into following after Yahweh. So do you think that was a curse that He says the wife's desire would now be turned into her husband?
Where was her desire before?
Her desire was with Yahweh, because they hadn't known sin yet. There was no sin in them, so they just desired to walk with Him in the cool of the morning, like Scripture says. But now sin has entered in, and now his desire remains to be with Yahweh, but her desire now is going to have to be one again. It's going to have to be turned into her husband. When I'm teaching this message, normally I make the point that the Torah, at this point, was don't eat of the tree until it was broken. Once that first commandment was broken and sin entered into the world, now Yahweh does the first thing in the Torah to absolve sin. What's that? Offers a blood sacrifice, right? He goes and kills an animal, makes clothes, puts it on Adam and Eve, clothes them with skin. They were already clothed. The Bible says that they were clothed with leaves already. So why did He go kill an animal, shed blood, and make clothes to put on?
They didn't have to plant?
Because the Torah now had come into effect. A blood sacrifice had to be made for sin. So He offered that first sacrifice, again, because it was He that put the tree in the garden. Okay? I don't want to get into the deep stuff here. We'll just stay on the low pass today. her desire shall be unto her husband, and he shall rule over her. Can you rule over somebody if their desire is not turned towards you?
It's gonna be constant conflict.
No. Okay. So ruling somebody. Let's go to just the last few hundred years in American history. So the slave trade. If you could just beat somebody into submission, and them say, "Oh yeah, I'll do whatever you say," there would have never been an underground railroad. There never would have been the freeing of the slaves. There never would have been freedom fighters. No, because you can't beat somebody into turning their desire to follow you. The Father knows that. He knows how He made us. The more oppression you put on somebody, what's going to happen?
Yeah, they're gonna rise up one day.
I tell you, I've trained a lot of soldiers in my life. And the one that everybody thought was the weakest, most cowardice person, when their boots hit the ground, that was normally the strongest soldier you had. More times than not, that was the case. Now, there was, from time to time, the genuine coward who didn't want to do anything but hide behind everybody. But in general, it wasn't the loudmouth that was out there saying, "I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that," before it happened. It was the guy that kept his mouth shut and just kind of stayed to himself. When boots hit the ground in combat, that's the person that normally rose to the top, because they weren't trying to show anybody who they were. They already knew who they were. Do you know who you are? Do you know who you belong to? So if you know who you are and you know who you belong to, then why are your desires still going after your own desires? Oh, I need a new car. I need a new house. I need a new this and I need a new that. Is that your desire or Yahweh's desire?
That's yours.
It's your desire. It may be Yahweh's desire at some point when you get all of your stuff starting to take care of and you're starting to go the way He wants you to go. He says that He'll bless you so much that the blessings that come upon you and overtake you. So yeah, at that point in your life, yeah, you might need a new car. And that doesn't interfere at all with your desire towards Yahweh. You might need a new home. And that doesn't interfere with your desire in any way to Yahweh. The whole goal is to change our desire as men to walk after Yahweh. Because there's something encoded in a woman's DNA. There I go, making trouble again.
Here we go.
There's something encoded, embedded in a woman's DNA. If your husband is following Yahweh to the best of his ability, and you see that in public, you see that at home, you see that in every aspect of your life, that's not saying he's not going to fail in areas sometime. But if he realizes he's failing and he's acknowledging those things and he's trying to make them better, then I guarantee you, I've counseled marriage after marriage after marriage, and the marriages that put this one principle into practice in their home were saved. Every one of them. There was never one that wasn't. And that is confessing when you are wrong as men. That's a hard thing for us to do, is say, blew it again. Sorry. But don't be the mealy mouth and just, "Oh, I blew it again, sorry." And then knowing you're going to blow it again tomorrow. Have a plan of action to stop right there and say, "What do I need to do to change this? The next time this thing comes around in our life, next time we go through this cycle, what do I need to do to change this?" Because that's what you're always doing to us. How many of you knows that we've talked before about the Greek mindset being linear, but a Hebrew mindset is cyclical, meaning that it goes around and around and around. And that's why we in our lives as Israelites, as people of the way, followers of Yahweh, that's why we see the same situations and the same circumstances repeating themselves over and over and over in our lives. Sure, they might look a little bit different from time to time, but that same cyclical cycle happens until you get the victory over it. Once you get the victory over it, guess what? You'll never go through that cycle again. You figured it out. The Father said, "Okay, they figured that one out. Let's give them a little tougher one the next time." It's not going to get easier. It's always going to get tougher. Because he's wanting you to turn your desire to walk after him. Because that's really what it all boils down to. Because if your desire as men is after his desire, then guess where your wife's desire is going to be? After you. Because you're exemplifying Yahweh to them. To rule over. Isaiah 3:12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. Does that sound right? This is Yahweh speaking. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. Okay. Might upset somebody's apple cart here. If your children are leading you around by the nose with this activity, that activity, this boyfriend, this girlfriend, this whatever it is, their plans are dragging you and your husband away from each other more than dragging you and your husband together, you got a problem. Your children are ruling over you. Their plans are ruling over your life. If you knew how many times in counseling I've had to tell people, hey, pull your kids out of sports. Pull your kids out of this. Pull your kids out of that. Quit allowing your kids to dictate your relationship with your husband or your wife. Because one day your kids are going to grow up. They're going to marry a husband and a wife. They're going to move out of your house. And you're going to be left with nothing because your whole life has been about your kids.
Right. Absolutely.
Forget about you. I mean, don't totally forget about your kids. Give them some food and a bath every once in a while. They might get stinky. But forget about them as far as your relationship goes. If your relationship is struggling, why are you focusing on your kids? Your kids need your relationship to be strong so when they get in a relationship later in life, will know how to have a strong relationship themselves. You're not painting the picture for them. My kids know. If your mama tells you something and you come to me and ask me the same question your mom already gave you an answer for, just forget. Just go hit my belt. Because when I find out about it, she's already given you the answer. The same is true with her. If I've given them an answer, she never goes over the top of me, and I'm never going to go over the top of her. We're a team. This is a war with these children. It's a battle plan. We got to have a united front. Because we have more kids than we have each other. Don't gang up on us and beat us up. But we have to realize our relationship with each other takes precedent over everything else, including our children. Men, your relationship with God takes precedent over everything, including your wife.
But it's not like that for wives.
I know that's hard for a lot of wives to hear, but it's the truth. There's sometimes Miss Four Dogs and that short little thing, she get her head twisted around, but I just have to say, shut up. You don't know what God is speaking to me, so just stay out of this. You'll see the end result. And every time it's had to come to that, and not very many times in our marriage, but it's happened a few times. Every time she's had to come back to me later and go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Sometimes I don't know. I just know what the Father's speaking to me. I don't know what the end result's going to be. I know it's going to be according to His plan and according to His will. And if I'm obedient, do I need to know? So I believe right now we're living in a very turbulent time. Should I have to turn to my wife and my kids and explain to them everything that's going on so they'll follow me out the door when the enemy's at the top of the hill already marching down here? Or should I just say, get your stuff and let's go? They get their stuff and they go. Trust me that I wouldn't be saying, get your stuff and let's go, if it wasn't time for us to get our stuff and go. There has to be that trust that's being built up over and over and over again. Because I promise you, no matter how good you are, we as men are going to fail over and over and over again. It's the same same relationship that we have with Yahweh. We try to the best of our ability to do everything that He's commanded us to do. But then, the next thing we know, we turn around and we're standing in the middle of sin. And we're like, whoa, how did I get in that? So, we need to start realizing our children, for one, should never rule over us. And our women definitely should not rule over us. Everybody hear that? A lot more women. I hope I'm getting stabbed after you dump this mess.
Oh, you got loud and clear, sir.
I can hear you anyway.
What are James, what were those scriptures again?
Isaiah 3:12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy paths. You're allowing everything but Yahweh to lead you. You're relying on your wife, you're relying on your children, because honestly, I mean, when I had the 9-to-5 thing, I would come home from work and I would just sit in my car for about 15 or 20 minutes. I just had to sit there and decompress from everything that happened in the day, because I didn't want to walk in that house and dump everything that had been dumped on me throughout that day. I don't want to go dump that on my kids and my wife. So I just had to sit in the car and decompress for a little while. That was my way of dealing with it. That way, when I walked through the door, because I had walked through the door many days without decompressing, those weren't good days. But you get your time to decompress a little bit, and then you can go in and hear about little Johnny who's broke the dishwasher for the 3rd time. You know, you've already decompressed. And sometimes we need to do that. Start walking in the Father's path. Hebrews 13:17. Obey them that have rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. Now I threw this one in there for myself. Those people who are watching for your souls, first of all, your husband, everybody's husband in here, should be watching for your soul, if you're their wife. Okay? So let's take the whole ministry aspect out of it, the Levite aspect out of it. Because you, first of all, are the king and the priest of your home. Okay? So you should be watching and guarding the souls of your wife and your children as long as they're under your covering. How do you do that? By when a problem arises, well, let's see what the Torah says about that. Most of the time, my kids don't even ask me what the Torah says anymore, because they've heard me tell them that over and over again. Hey, Dad, can I do this on Sabbath? Well, are we supposed to do that on the Sabbath? Okay. We better not do that on the Sabbath. If you've instructed them in righteousness, and they just do it now you don't have to sit down and have a 20-minute conversation with them. Now you just give them the reminder. What does the Torah say about us doing that on the Sabbath? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. And I shouldn't have even asked to do that on the Sabbath. It's against the Torah. Then, leading them is a joy. But when you have to have a fight every time, well, why do we have to do this at sundown on Friday night? Well, because we're acknowledging the Sabbath. You know, whatever those rules are that you've established in your home, everybody in your home should be following them rather than trying to make you annoyed. So husbands and wives. Now here's where we get a little different. Ephesians 5:22 through 27. Wives, submit. Okay, let's talk to some wives. Costa, what does that mean? To submit.
Follow.
Follow. Cordell, what's that mean to submit? could obey. Kristen?
We need to submit. It means to, well, follow really without question.
Okay. Miss Mahela? It's hard to it's hard to say without teaching a message on it. Follow their lead. Shirley?
I think all them said it. Follow your
Submit.
husband.
Okay, most of us live in, well, not most of us, all of us, except for the Knowles now, live here in Oklahoma, and I know where they come from, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, this area. So I guarantee you, everybody in here, except for maybe the children, have seen a horse broken.
I have.
So, everybody's seen a horse broken? From a wild horse to a tame horse. Okay? So, when you get married, you're just a little young filly. Yeah. Prancing around the pasture.
There you go. There you go.
Then, here comes the cowboy. He's got to take control of you. How does he do that?
Gains trust.
I've seen horses hard broke, and I saw horses soft broke. The ones that are hard broke, leave them out in the pasture for 6 months. See what happens to them. They'll go green. You'll do it all over again. If you soft break a horse, you can go get on that horse 3 years from now, 4 years from now. And sure, he might have a little memory problem about whether he wants the neck rein or pull rein. But once he gets it figured out again, he'll be the same horse you had 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Because you did it gently. We've been talking about servant leadership for a while. The servant leader comes in and soft breaks a horse. Because I don't want to have to worry what she's doing when I'm not around. I want to change her desire to walk after me. So I don't have to worry about what she's doing when I'm not around. I know that when my kids come to her when I'm not around, she's going to give my kids the same answer I would have given them if I'm there. I know a lot of marriages that have failed simply because they were united when they were both in the house, but if the husband worked away, the wife would be letting the kids get away with things that she knew the father wouldn't let them get away with if he was home. When you soft break them, you don't ever have to do that. And I know that's a bad term, soft break them. But that's really what submit is. You're asking them, this is a symbiotic union, and you're asking this woman to trust you enough to just let you lead in every aspect. In every aspect. And if she does trust you enough, then her will be submitted to your will at that point. Sure, there may be a little struggle here and there, but in general, her will is going to be submitted. I heard a lady talk about submission. I can't remember her name, but she was a high-priced attorney, or maybe it was vice versa. She was a high-priced doctor, and her husband was a high-priced attorney. Could be either way. Anyways, she was teaching about submission, and because they had these highfalutin jobs, they lived that kind of lifestyle, and they bought a new house. I forget, we'll just say $1 million, $2 million. I don't care what the number is, but they bought this and they bought that, and they had all this debt that was maxing out their income. So they were pretty much maxed out on their income to where all they had money left for was groceries, utilities, and maybe a little bit extra for entertainment. So her husband comes home from work one day and he's like, hey, I want to buy this new Mercedes. And she's like, hold on. We don't have the money to buy this new Mercedes. Okay, she was the lawyer. That's made it click. Because she's doing the finances. She's like, we don't have the money to do that. We're stretched to our limit right now. If something drastic happened, we probably wouldn't survive it. That's where we're at financially right now. And she said that during this time, she was praying to God about how to be submissive to her husband. Because she's this high-priced corporate attorney, it's hard for her to be submitted to another man when she's having to leave men at her job. Now she's having to come home and be submitted to her husband. And so she's praying to God, about how to do that. And he comes home with such a stupid idealist to buy this new Mercedes when they don't have the money. And she's like, no, we don't have the money. And then her prayer comes back to her mind about being submitted. So she goes in there and she gets the checkbook out because she's the one that does the finances. And she shows her husband, we really don't have the money. But I'm your wife. I'll follow you wherever you lead. She's trying to play the part of submitted at this point. So 3 days later, husband comes home from work, brand new Mercedes. She is freaking out, is what she said. Because she knows now they have no wiggle room. Every dime they're making now is going out the door. They literally nothing left over. So he got them to price the car within their budget, but $0 left over. So if somebody got sick and they had a big copay or something like that, they're having to go to the bank and go in debt that they can't pay. So she's angry in her mind, and she's like, I'm going to tell him this, and then the father reminds her about the submission thing. So she doesn't even talk to him. She just goes to the father and starts telling the father, you know how stupid he is. I just showed him our finances, and he goes out and buys this new car. And while she's praying, she said the father spoke to her again. Submit yourself. Submit yourself to your husband. And she said for like 2 months, this was the hardest thing in the world for her because things kept getting tougher and tougher and tougher on them as a couple because this unexpected expense was coming up, and this unexpected expense was coming up, and this unexpected expense was coming up, and there's no money. There's no money for anything, and they're going under instead of getting over. But she said, you know what, Father? I don't care. If we end up homeless, if we end up driving a Volkswagen Bug to our high-priced jobs, I don't care. You told me to submit to him, and I'm going to submit to him. And as soon as her will totally submitted to God, her husband gets promotion on his job. Salary increased almost $100,000. A week after that, she gets a promotion on her job. Her salary increases almost $100,000. So now, because of her being submitted and going to the Father about it, not going to him, not telling him how stupid he is to get him in all this trouble and all this kind of stuff, she totally had figured out how to submit her will to the will of her husband. The Father blessed him. Now, I'm not telling you men to go do something stupid like go buy a new Mercedes. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that that's how the Father used the lesson of submission for her. Whatever that is for you. But wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands as unto the Lord. Florida, when we first got together, because in the Philippines, terms of endearment are a big thing. So I had no clue about the culture when I met her. She probably thought I was a dumb hick, but and I am. So she probably guessed right. But she asked me, hey, what term of endearment would you like me to use? Because they don't call each other by their name normally. They call each other by terms of endearment. And And she was thinking about something like honey or baby or sweetie or something like that. And I said, you just call me your king. I was totally joking. But she started calling me my king. She still calls it. Anybody who's been around, everybody in the congregation has probably heard her say it more than once.
Well, that explains why.
She calls me her king. Probably made a big mistake there, because sometimes we'll be in the middle of crowded public places. Hey, my king! I'm like, so, be careful what you say to a submitted woman.
Yeah, she's submitted.
That's hilarious.
That's not funny, Dad.
That was pretty funny, guys.
No, stop.
For the husband is the head of the wife. Now, most Messianic women, they don't have a problem with that statement. But you go tell most of the world, those women that our wives are interacting with on a daily basis on a job or the women's cooking bee, I don't know, whatever it is you're doing. You tell them that their husband is their head. And see how fast their heads pop off. There ain't no man ruling over me. There ain't nobody. We're in this thing. It's a 50-50. But all the time claiming, bless God, I love Jesus. Where does that come from? It's because, just what the previous scripture said, we're enslaved by our children, and our wives are ruling over us. Because we as men have abdicated our roles in our homes. Because sometimes it's just easier. We've dealt with the world all day long. We've had to go out and break our backs, being under the curse that we got in the garden, having to make a living by the sweat of our brow. And then we come home and our wife's got her list of 88 problems when you walk through the door. So now you're having to deal with all that, and you're just like, well, why don't you just deal with that? Why can't you deal with some of this while I'm out working all day long? Well, the next thing you know, now you've abdicated that role to your wife. We got to stop doing that. We just have to stop doing it. Okay. And he is the Savior of the body. Okay? Hold on, let's go back here. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Yeshua, Mashiach, is the head of the assembly and the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Mashiach, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Not in some things, in everything. Now, I want you to understand something. Did that scripture say, wives, submit yourselves to your husband as long as he's doing everything you think he should be doing to God?
No.
That's not what it said, did it? It was just a commandment to you to submit yourself. The same way that we are supposed to submit ourselves to the Mashiach, you should submit yourself to, because he's the one that saves our body. And he gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. How are you sanctified? How are you women sanctified?
By our husbands.
By his what? By his word, right? If you're obedient to his word, you're sanctified. The same way your husband is sanctified, if he's obedient to Yahweh's word, then he's sanctified. I'll tell you, I'm not talking about the stupid things. I've taught this before and people go, oh, so you're telling me I can tell my wife to go kill somebody and she... Don't be stupid. That's not, clearly your wife knows it's wrong to murder somebody. I mean, that's not what we're talking about here. But I can clearly instruct my wife to do something against Torah that she doesn't have full knowledge of. If she goes and does that, when she stands before Yahweh, even though she's the one that committed the sin, who's going to be judged?
You.
Not her. Me. She's going to have no blame in that at all because she was submitted to me. So men, that's how your wife can go to heaven and you go to hell. Because you've unrighteously and unjustly commanded her when she submitted to you to do something against Yahweh. To walk contrary to Yahweh. To walk contrary to His commandments. So you better be very careful about how you're instructing your wives.
Can I ask a question, Jamie?
Yes.
So is the way this thing is really supposed to work is, so the husband is submitted to Yahweh and the knowledge comes from Yahweh to the husband, and then the knowledge comes to the wife through the husband. Is that the way it's supposed to work?
That's exactly the way it's supposed to work.
Okay.
Paul makes that a little bit clearer when he said, and I know women hate this scripture. Bless God, praise Jesus. Oh, wait. As y'all know, I've had some family do that to me. Paul says, for the women to remain silent in the assembly. For it's a shame for them to speak, but to go home and learn from their husbands. Okay?
Okay, so in the Torah portion, I noticed that there were women ministering in the doorways of the temple.
Exactly.
What is up with that?
Were they submitted to their husbands?
I'm sure they were.
There you go. Okay. So I tell the story about my grandmother and my grandfather. I personally, it's hard for me to sit under a woman pastor.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather couldn't read or write. They, for whatever reason, I think he had kindergarten or something. Just never learned to read or write. One of the most intelligent men I ever met in my whole life. You take a piece of wood and carve you out a Stradivarius violin. I mean, it's just rebuild a motor in an afternoon. I mean, that's just the type of guy he was. Super intelligent. Just didn't know how to read and write. And my grandmother was pastoring a church. And as a young kid, young whippersnapper, thinking I knew it all, well, you shouldn't be pastoring a church, and you shouldn't be doing that. And then one day, Grandpa heard me telling her that, and he said, why shouldn't she? I've told her to do that.
But here's the question. Did your grandmother have the knowledge of the word, or did she have more knowledge than he did?
She absolutely had more knowledge
So
than
then,
him.
is that really, if she were saying something out of line, he wouldn't know the difference, and then he's not with her every time she's ministering.
She was submitted to him. And even if that was a little out of order, that was their understanding at that time of that scripture. As long as she was submitted to him, then she could operate in ministry, and there's no doubt that she did. I mean, I've seen miracles happen under her ministry.
Yeah, but I'm saying that if a woman is going to minister, should her husband not have more knowledge than she's got, and then be there in case she slips up?
Well, that's
so
not
he
always
can
the
correct
case.
her.
If your wife's a doctor and
I mean
you're an
biblical
attorney,
knowledge.
should you have more knowledge about doctrine than attorneying?
Well, no, I'm talking about ministry.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, it really shouldn't matter. Okay, so if Floridel knew more of the Torah than me, and I'm the one teaching right now, I would use her as a resource. Okay, I would be going to her saying, "Hey, I'm seeing this. Is this true? What I'm seeing here is it conflicting with something else?" If I knew she knew more about the Torah than I am. I hope every man in here is married to a woman smarter than him. I really do, because we do some dumb stuff. So
James,
yeah.
I know there was a really good quote I kind of shared on Facebook, but it was saying that if a woman thinks of her husband as lesser than her, that they are not
They're not equal. They're not equal.
And I really was thinking about that, and if you look at today's society, particularly like with movies and comedy and whatnot, we have belittled our men so much that it kind of ingrains in us that
Well, it's
trying to train us that our men are not our equal, that they're lesser.
It's in everything. I can't even hardly watch TV. I mean, I just can't. I mean, the commercials, bug me till I want to get my gun out and shoot my TV. I mean, it's every commercial is homosexuals and it's just debauchery at every turn. I'm not saying you can't watch a movie or whatever. I mean, I try to, if I watch TV at all, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna find a movie, I'm gonna watch it, and that way I can shut it off. I don't like what's it's saying. You know, just where I'm at. But that's the problem with the society that we live in today. Almost every sitcom, it's hilarious for the wife to be demasculating, or the children to be demasculating the man of the home.
Disney movies are so bad about that.
It is.
So our kids know Disney.
We were watching a movie. Oh yeah, the whole princess thing Disney's got going on right now. Everything's about the princess, unless it's a homo.
Go with princess.
Then it's princess.
Really is about that.
So when we start looking at that, the way our society has twisted that, I have no problem. When we go to the Philippines, you know who I'm relying on more than anybody else for everything. Because it don't matter how smart I am in the Torah. It doesn't matter that I'm a soldier. It doesn't matter that I'm more than capable of taking care of myself physically. It doesn't matter any of that. When I go to the Philippines, I don't know jack. She does. I have to rely on her for everything in that arena. I might be eating squid or something if I was over there by myself. I don't know. Yeah. I tell the story, you know, when we were dating, we'd have to talk to each other online quite a bit. And we were doing video conferencing most of the time, and she'd be sitting out there on this little poor hobble hut like type thing, and yeah, it's like it really was like Gilligan's Island. And I'd see this cat or this dog walk around behind her or something. I'd go, "You ain't gonna eat that, are you?" She never got the joke because it was an American joke. She's like, "No." The American joke is Philippines, they like cat and dog. They don't. Okay. So, as far as that whole knowledge thing goes, though, we should not. We should, as men, if I'm a good king, and you have to think about this a minute. If I'm a good king, and this is my realm, who's my next in charge? My wife, right? Our kids should be our subjects, not our rulers. Okay? So, if I'm a good king and she's better at managing finances than I am, what should I do as a good king? It would be stupid of me not to utilize that resource and allow her to manage the finances, wouldn't it be? That wouldn't be me being a good king. That would be me being an arrogant king. If she's better at Torah than I am, it would be stupid of me as her husband not to go, "Hey, I'm thinking something's wrong here. What does the Torah say about this?" That's being a good king. That's not saying that she can't. She's ministering to me. She is my helpmeet at that time. Now, if she understands the subject better than I do, and I'm asked to go somewhere, and they said, you know, "Hey, I want you to teach on what it's like being a 34-year-old Filipino girl," I'm like, "Oh, I have just the person for that." She knows a whole lot more about what that's like than I do. So, I disagree with the thing that you have to have more knowledge. The husband has to have more knowledge than
Well,
the wife.
then this is my question. If he is responsible for me, and I'm teaching something that is contrary to Torah, and he does not know that, he is going to get punished for that, not me.
Well,
Right?
that's exactly right.
Then I think it's pretty important that he knows more than I do in
It's
Torah.
very important. And that's why if you see him doing something that you know is wrong in the Torah, you as a helpmeet should go, not trying to teach him, You're not his teacher.
But I'm talking about like if I were a woman ministering, and if my husband is not even there, and I'm ministering under his authority, and he's not even there,
Hey,
and I'm misleading people, he's still
you're
accountable for
preaching at the
that.
choir when it comes to women ministry.
Yeah, I
I
know,
mean,
but that's what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to understand how this all really is supposed to work.
I think the women that you were talking to there ministering in the gates were women who were fully submitted to their husbands, that their husbands had said, okay, you can stay here outside the synagogue and you can minister to these younger women that are having to stand out here as well because they don't know this. I've instructed you at home the way I was supposed to. So when their husbands come out, they're not berated with questions for the next 7 days about what the rabbi was teaching at synagogue this week. So they're doing their job. In fact, Paul makes that clear as well. He's like, let the older women teach the younger.
Well, I know a lot of, at least from what I'm hearing, a lot of Torah families where the woman is coming into Torah before the husband, they're not studying together.
No.
And so when you don't study together, it's not allowing the husband to kind of see where you're at in your knowledge of Torah. And it's not really truly sharing kind of what you know with the husband. If you're studying, and he's studying, but you're not studying together, then it is not helpful.
I'm going to tell you probably the most uncomfortable thing that most men in here are not doing. And I'll call you out. When's the last time you took your hand to your wife and said, hey, let's pray about this? That's part of it. That's part of it, man. If you're not praying together, if you're not reading the scriptures together, if you're not talking about those things together, your physical life is important. If your spiritual life is thriving, guess what's going to happen to your physical life? I'm telling you, if your spiritual life is thriving, your physical life will be thriving. Because we are spiritual beings wrapped in a flesh and a meat sack. That's all this is a meat sack. And if we're feeding our spiritual man, then our fleshly man is going to be vibrant and being able to take care of itself. So, I mean, everybody knows what the major problems in marriage: sex, money, time. That's basically what every problem in marriage boils down to: sex, money, and time. When you get to the heart of it. I mean, it could be, we could talk about betrayal and all that kind of stuff. And it really doesn't matter. It all boils down to those three things. Okay? So, are we doing to our wives, then, what Yeshua is doing for us? He cares about the way we feel. He's trying to administer the balm of Gilead to past wounds. We talked about it when we were talking about Fifth Sabbath a week or so ago. We've been taught, even if you're a believer, we've been taught that once a man marries a woman, he is responsible for her from that point forward. Is that true?
Yes.
No, that's absolutely not true. When a man marries a woman, it's the same relationship God has with the man. I don't want God to just take me from that moment I said, forgive me. I want Him to take me from the moment I was born and forgive every sin I've ever committed against Him all the way up until the moment I recognized Him as Lord of my life. So not only is He going to take responsibility for the rest of my life, He took responsibility for the beginning of my life and took that sin and cast it as far as the east is from the west. But a lot of you women and a lot of you men are walking around with baggage built up in your heart, built up in your life, that you're too afraid to even share with your husband, who you're supposed to be one with. When He married you, He took ownership of those sins. So who are you to be a thief and take them things away from Him? Because He's got to get them covered under the blood the same way He got His own sins covered under the blood. That's why your wife's walking in rebellion. That's why your children are walking in rebellion. Because they're not allowing you to take control of that part of their life. They're submitted to you, but you can't know that. If you know that ugly part of me, you won't love me anymore. You won't treat me the same anymore. You won't look at me the same anymore. It's the truth. We have to get to the place that we're willing to lay all of that stuff out. Now, don't lay it all on me at once. but just give me a little bite at a time so we can get that thing healed, because it needs to be healed. Because that's really what sin does. Sin is like taking a razor and just slicing part of your soul. So we need to find a way to take those scars that have been placed in our wives' lives, reopen them up. By them sharing them with us, they're going to reopen that scar in their life. And now, again, you can apply the balm of Gilead. Hey, I don't care. I don't care that you did those things. That was a lifetime. Me in Florida. I mean, I gave her the 30,000-foot view of my life. Okay? Told her all of the evil stuff that I had done. I didn't have to tell her the details. Okay? The details haunt somebody. So that's what I'm not telling you to go to your husband and tell him the details of everything. Just explain to him the 30,000-foot view. I need healing in this area of my life because I feel neglected. I feel wounded. I feel broken. You got to share those things. But here's the opposite side of that. Men, you need to be able to go to your wife and say, look, this is bugging me. Because I know it has nothing to do with you. It's because of this old girlfriend who used to sing, I don't know, Quiet Right. She used to sing this Quiet Right song to me back when we were teenagers. And now every time I hear that song, it puts me back in that place, and I see what it is you're judging your wife now by an emotion that you had with somebody else 20 years ago. You can't do that. We cannot do that. We can't judge our wives, or you can't judge your husband for something that they haven't done. Just because they're exhibiting a behavior that might resemble a past behavior doesn't mean that they're guilty of that behavior. So we have to love each other and trust in each other enough to come into that symbiotic union. I didn't mean to get into all the psychobabbles today.
James, I'd like to add that in doing that, on both sides, we have to be not only willing to give, but to receive without condemnation and all that. We need to be able to just take that straight to the Father in prayer, like you were saying. Take a hand. Okay, let's pray about this and deal with it right then and there, not months, weeks, years down the road. Because that's when the stuff festers.
I tell people, I always try to paint myself as this evil guy growing up. And I really only had two problems. I mean, two major setbacks in my life. Number one is I had anger issues. And the enemy sometimes still tries to remind me of those old anger issues that I have gotten the victory over. Okay? Let me rephrase that Yahweh has gotten the victory over. So he tries to bring those things back up from time to time and say, see, you ain't changed. See, you ain't changed. That's the enemy's work. That ain't Yahweh's work. That's the enemy's work. And the other one was I was a woman. I shared all that with Florida. She don't need to know the details of that. She don't need to know the details of all the anger-fueled fights and all that kind of stuff that I've been in. She don't need those details. All she needs to know is, look, I had a problem in this area, and if you see these certain things happening, hey, hold me accountable. You're my help me. You should be my first line of defense against the enemy. Because guess what? Women are more emotionally connected than men. So she can tell when a woman's flirting with me. I can't. I don't know. She'll pick it up as soon as they walk through the door. Because she's connected that way. I have to trust her. I have to trust her in those areas. Okay. I'm gonna stay away from that. Okay. There was a guy at Sokoke this year, and he was getting a little a little rambunctious. she knows if somebody gets me to that point, James gets stupid. So she comes over there and grabs me by the arm, trying to drag me away from this guy. Hey, we need to go over here. Because she knows that I can be volatile at times. When the guy really wasn't being volatile towards me. He was talking about a different situation. Just she did read that one wrong. but she protects me in those ways. That's the way the Messiah is supposed to protect us as well. Continue reading. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. Okay. Now, he's talking. You notice how when he's talking to the women about being submitted, it's all about the spiritual aspect. How Yeshua is protecting the church and guiding the church and all this kind of thing. What's the first thing he mentions with men?
Physical.
The physical. Because women, you want all this emotional support. You want all this emotional carry, touchy-feely, cuddling. You want all of that stuff, but you don't understand that a man is physical. Everything in his mind is physical. We're made different. We have different makeups. So, if you want him to be what you want him to be, share that with him. But then help him understand how to get there as well. Because he's physical in nature. I'm not going to go into the whole Venus and Mars and all that psychobabble stuff on that. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourished it and cherished it, even as Yahweh the church, even as the sovereign, the church, the assembly. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is the great mystery. They two shall be one flesh. Now I've heard this message preached numerous times, and it's always equated to some sexual reference about intercourse and them becoming one flesh. Is that what this is talking about?
In one accordance, in one agreement, and
It's one flesh in every way. We talked about it a week or two ago. You know, if she moves to the right, you move to the right. If she moves to the left, or he moves to the left, you move to the left. The male and the female should be in this symbiotic union that they don't even need direction anymore. If you're connecting with each other, you wouldn't even need direction anymore. Florida, I mean, there's things that me and Florida still struggle with, but the majority of things, she'll tell Crescent, hey, you know your dad's not gonna like that. It's not even that she likes it or doesn't like it. She's like, you know your dad's not gonna like that. So when they start recognizing you as the head of the home, then you have to start playing that role. I got one more thing. I'm gonna try to burn through it. I know I didn't mean to go into all that other stuff today. Numbers 30, verse 1. And Moses spake unto the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which Yahweh hath commanded. If a man vow a vow unto Yahweh, and swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. Okay, so here's a man vowing a what? Vow. If Wayne comes to me and he says, look, I paid $2,000 for this gun. I'm going to sell it to you for $200 because he knows I don't have $200 today. If you can come up with $200 today, I'm going to sell you this $2,000 gun this afternoon. And I go, oh yeah, I remember, I got $200 in the safe. I didn't think you could come up with $200. He's vowed a vow. Now he has to sell me because it can't be. Once a man vows a vow, he's bound by it because his vow is held up by Yahweh. Okay?
I mean, he doesn't have to say anything like, I promise, or,
Nope. He said, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay.
Yeah.
So, if he vows a vow, if it comes out of his mouth, he is going to or he's not going to do this or that, and he's bound by that vow. Women's vows. Now, here's where we get into a little thing. Numbers. Actually, somebody just get a Bible and start reading that for me. I'll stop from time to time. Numbers 30. I'll start at verse 3.
I've got it.
Okay.
Or if a woman vows a vow to Yahweh and binds her.
Okay, so let's stop here first. So this first section is talking about a woman, a young woman, a maid, who still lives in her father's house. Crescent, living in my house. Okay? She's still living in my home. Okay, go ahead.
And binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears
Okay.
her vow.
So let's give you real world application. So Crescent, living in my home, she's under my covering. She's a maid of Israel, so she's under my covering, and she sees the puppy. She wants a puppy, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll take that puppy." Okay, go ahead.
And her father hears her vow and the agreement by which she has bound herself.
What? We got 27 dogs already. Why do we need another dog?
And her father has kept silent towards her, then all her vows shall stand. And every agreement.
Okay. So if I didn't say anything, if I just kept my mouth shut, hoping that she would figure it out, well, we got 27 other dogs, what do we need another dog for? You know, if I don't say a word about it, guess who's stuck taking care of a dog?
you get 28 dollars.
I got 28 dogs because I kept my mouth shut.
And every agreement with which she has bound herself stands. But if her father forbids her on the day that he hears, then none of her vows nor her agreements by which she has bound herself stand.
Okay, so if in the day I hear it, now we have to be very careful about what Scripture's saying here. You can't go a week later and say, man, I should have said something about that dog. Let's just get rid of that dog. No. You have to disallow that vow in the day you hear it. Because if you don't, if you remain silent about it and you think, well, maybe we could take care of another dog, and hem-haw around about it until the sun sets, guess what? You're stuck with the dog. The sun has set on that vow, it's marked. A new day has begun, you're bound by that vow. So you be very careful about when your children come to it. Oh yeah, I signed up for the new science fair project and I'm going to be making nuclear bombs in the basement. You better disallow that vow in the day you hear it.
And Yahweh pardons her because her father has forbidden her. But if she at all belongs to a husband,
Now,
well
I want to stop there for just a second. She's vowed a vow. She's made this vow. She's made a promise to do this. She's made a promise to do that. What that scripture is saying is, I'm the head of her. The same way I'm the head of my wife. I'm the head of her. And Yahweh himself will not hold them accountable if I break their vow.
Mm-hmm.
But if she at all belongs to a husband while bound by her vows or by a rash utterance from her lips, by which she bound herself, and her husband hears it, and he has kept silent towards her on the day that he hears, then her vows shall stand, and her agreements by which she bound herself do stand. But if her husband forbids her on the day that he hears it, then he has nullified her vow which she vowed, and the rash utterance of her
Now
lips.
let's real life situation. I saw the way she was flirting with you. Next time I see her, I'm going to slap her face off. What happened?
Live out.
She's made a vow, right? And if you keep your mouth shut because you don't want to get in the middle of it and look like you're taking up for her, guess what? Next time they come together and she slaps your face off, you better keep your mouth shut. Because you allowed the vow. You should be the man enough to stand up and go, no. Did anything happen there? Nothing happened there. I didn't fall into that trap. So you keep your mouth shut and just stay away from her. Now he's nullified that vow, right? He had the wisdom to see a future problem and shut it down.
And a rash utterance of her lips by which she bound herself, and Yahweh pardons her. But any vow,
When does that happen? At what point does she come to the husband from the father?
Okay, as soon, okay, now here's a big thing. In our world, in our society, you're not married until you walk down the aisle and say I do and blah blah this and blah blah that, okay? In biblical culture, as soon as your dad makes an agreement with your future husband and they shake hands, you're married. Done deal. You haven't consummated that marriage yet because still you have to go through that waiting period of a year to make sure you aren't pregnant or been defiled, first of all. After that year, your dowry is given, the bride's price is paid, then you come in under the chuppah and you get married and you consummate the marriage in your father's home. But you're married, you're betrothed from the day the agreement's made. So now, if she makes an agreement, I'm just using her as an example. If she vows a vow and Silas says no, it doesn't matter what Dad says anymore. Because now she's married, she's still living in Dad's home, but she's married to somebody else. Try that one out for a minute.
So would that be like the engagement?
Huh?
To this day, it's like engagement?
It is. You men, we need to realize how serious Yahweh is about this covenant. He is so dead serious about this covenant. He's trying to let you know when you give your daughter away to a man, she is another's possession at that point. She doesn't belong to you anymore. Now, we're in the future weeks we're going to go through all the things. You know, if while she's betrothed, she's raped in the field and nobody's able to hear her scream, or if she doesn't scream, I mean, or somebody entices her away from the one she's betrothed to during that time. I mean, all of those things take into place because Yahweh takes that covenant so serious. So you better understand before you allow your daughter to go into a union, as you men, before you allow your daughters to go into a union with a boy saying we're engaged, you better think. Because you're relinquishing all control at that point. You're giving that man the right to tell your daughter what to do from that point on. Now, she's still living in your home, and I'm sure the dad would go, okay, as long as during this year she's in my home, she's going to follow the rules of this home. You've established that at the betrothal process. So now you're kind of retaining your rights, but you don't have the right to disallow her vows anymore. He does. So now, as soon as you hear her make a vow, Dad, you're going to have to get on the phone. Hey, Silas, this crazy thing's over here talking about getting another dog, and we got 27 dogs. So Silas is going to have to go, okay, let me out the phone. What are you talking about getting another dog? It's just the way that whole thing works. So the next portion there, we'll just kind of skip over. It's talking about the widow and the divorcee. David, you had something?
So yeah, when you were talking about the bride's price and possession and all that, I mean, it just dawned on me that right then and there, you pay for her baggage.
Sure.
You bought it. It's now yours. So there's no turning back, you know. You paid for her garbage, her baggage, everything that comes with it. So you got to deal with it.
From the beginning. Not from the day you take her, but from the beginning. And the husband is supposed to actually have a place prepared, and if something happens to him, have enough money stored up, if she's young, to last her several years so she can find another husband. If she's past the age of childbearing, he's supposed to have saved up enough money for her to survive the rest of her life without having to work. Huh?
Even before they're married?
If you take a woman who's already been married or her husband dies, you should have enough dowry saved up that if you marry her and you die, she can survive for the rest of her life.
Oh, okay.
Because she may not be able to bear children anymore
Right.
past that point.
That's what life insurance is for, that.
Huh?
That's what life insurance is for, that.
That's just common sense in nowadays world. You don't have life insurance, you like
Right.
running naked down the street. Okay, so we're gonna skip over a little bit. Okay, so I think 9 through 16. I want to jump down to but now, okay, to the widow and the divorcee. So now, Floridale's made a vow. Okay, we're going to buy this 20 acres across the road. We're not going to start buying it though until next year. Next January is going to be our first payment on it. We'll take possession of it then. And she's made a deal with the guy, and I'm thinking, yeah, that 20 acres is pretty good 20 acres, and the price is right. So I keep my mouth shut and stay out of this, because clearly she's competent enough to buy land if she wants to buy land, you know. And we have money, we have the means to do that. So yeah, just let her make the deal, and I keep my mouth shut. Now, halfway through that waiting year, I die. Does that release her from the vow to buy that land?
No.
No, absolutely not. Nope. She's still bound by the vow to buy that land. Not only that, is if in that year she does something, which we've already talked about, biblical marriage and divorce, okay? But she does something that I put her away. I kick her out of my house and divorce her. Is she released from that vow? Nope. But there's another little story behind that. Because I'm still alive, who's really responsible for the vow?
You.
Me. So, man, again, be very careful what you allow your wives to agree to or not to agree to. Okay. Okay, so let's jump down here to but if he shall say in any ways, make them void, after that he had heard them, then he shall bear her iniquity. That's the point I wanted to get to. Scripture says that one man can't pay for the sins of another, right? Mm-hmm. Men. One man can't pay for the sins of another man. Clearly right here he says that men can pay for the sins of a woman. Did you hear that, man? That's why I tell people every time I teach this message, I say it numerous times. I would have had a lot better been born a woman than a man. Because if I was born a woman and I understood Scripture like I understand it now, all I would have to do is what my husband said. I don't have to seek Yahweh. I don't have to do those things. I don't have to. All I got to do is listen to what my husband says, and I'm going to be all right. Because I'm fully submitted to him, because he's fully submitted to God. So if he's instructing me wrong, what's that say he's going to have to do?
Pay for your iniquity.
He's going to have to bear my iniquity.
Even if a woman knows different.
What's it say?
Okay. Well, that takes a lot of pressure off of me, I can tell you that.
It takes a lot of pressure off of every woman.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts a lot of pressure on
It
us.
puts a lot of pressure on me.
Guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we should be reading our Bible. We should be praying. We should be getting our wives by the hand from time to time. I'm not one of those guys telling you, I wish you would. I mean, I wish I was better at it. Just getting her by the hand, praying with her every night and every morning. I mean, I wish I was better at that. But when I'm talking to Yahweh, most of the time I want to be completely by myself. I tell her all the time, hey, you need to go pray. I'll go pray. You know, I'll go to my separate place and pray. But I should be better about taking her by the hand and us praying together. That's a big thing. We should be better about reading the Word together. I always tell her and her all the time, you need to read your Bibles. So they'll be sitting in there in the bed. Well, her mom will tell her. I'll tell Florida, you need to read your Bible. And then her mom will go get her and say, hey, you need to do your reading. So, should be reading together as much as possible. Should be praying together as much as possible. Because Yahweh's not separate from us when we're praying with Him, is He? So we should probably have our wives with us when we're praying as well. That way we can pray in one accord and read in one accord. That way we're learning together. And I mean, after you read through a year's Torah cycle, man, you should know the Torah well enough. If you're reading on your own, don't listen to her, she's flapping her yap. Listen to what Scripture says. Okay? Read through the Torah yourself, and now if she's trying to tell you some Jewish mysticism, supernatural, Kabbalistic garbage, you can go, nah, the Torah says this. Okay? Because you read through the Torah portion. You understand what it says. Just take Yahweh at His word. Don't take what somebody thinks His word says. I think I'm going to close there. Torah portion is Vayikal. He gathered. The Torah is Exodus 35, 1 through 38, 20. Half Torah is 1 Kings 7, 40 through 50. The Gospel is Matthew 12, 1 through 13. Shabbat Shalom. I hope everybody that joined us today liked what we were talking about. Sorry it was kind of chaotic today. But we'll see you next time at Bet Hallel. Shalom.
Shalom.